The taproom is hugely important. So when you go to a taproom, a brewery's taproom, you are face-to-face with one specific brand. So from like an experiential standpoint, the taproom is huge. Getting people to come here to experience our brand, experience our products, because that's the other thing. When you go to a restaurant or a liquor store, they might have loose cannon on tap, but I have 20 beers on tap that a lot of people might have only ever tried one or two of our beers before. So it gives people an opportunity to try more variety from a brewery and again, experience our brand. And hopefully people come, they love our beers, they love what they taste, they like the brand, they have a good time here. So the taproom is hugely important from a brand awareness and experiential standpoint. For us, it is definitely a way to introduce ourselves to newer people that might not be as familiar with us, get them to try a new style or seasonal or whatever it might be that they've never had before.
All right. Well, Caroline, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I want to dive into your background first.
Sure.
So, I was checking out your LinkedIn, and you obviously have been in the craft beer space for quite some time. Your father founded the company, and I'm sure you've been surrounded by heavy seas your entire life. And you graduated from college, and then you worked with Heavy Seas for a little bit, and then you moved on to a marketing role at a different company, and now you're back with Heavy Seas.
Yep.
So can you tell me about what your journey has looked like and what made you decide to get back into the space?
Yeah, no, so Heavy Seas was founded in 1995. I was 5 years old. So I joke around that Heavy Seas has been part of my whole life, and it really has, but I didn't really know what that meant until college and after college. So when I was in college, I was probably like everyone in college, not really sure what I wanted to do. And I was a marketing major, a business major. So after I graduated, I was fortunate that I was able to get a job here, working for the family business in our marketing department. And at that time, I was just kind of like a marketing assistant. So I was kind of doing a little bit of everything, helping with our social media, helping with events, working brewery tours that we were doing here, a little bit of everything. And I just kind of was trying to figure out my own path. But I was with the company for about 7 years, and throughout those 7 years, I kind of stumbled into mainly like an event coordinator role. So I'll give you a tour later on, but we've been in the same facility since our founding, and we've gone through several expansions over the years. So we had more space at one point, and we were doing large scale events, bringing a lot of people here for like food and beer tasting type of events. So I was kind of responsible for managing and executing those. But 7 years went by, and as rewarding, but not without its challenges, it is to be in a family business. I think there was just something in the back of my mind, like, is this really what I want to be doing? It's great working with Dad, but maybe there's something else I want to explore and see if that's a better fit for me. So I left. I left in 2019. Right before COVID, and I went to work for an advertising agency in Baltimore for 4 years, and it was probably the best move I could have made from a professional and personal standpoint. I kind of grew up a little bit more so than I had here because I was, under Dad's wings.
Yep. Sure.
But yeah, so the experience that I got at the advertising agency was great. COVID hit. We were working from home. A lot of things changed, obviously, as everyone knows. And then around my third or fourth year working there, I was kind of getting an itch to come back. The beer industry is a lot of fun. So that was just something I was getting an itch to do again. So I came back, and now I'm the director of marketing. I'm overseeing everything we do from a marketing standpoint, our tap room. And it was really interesting coming back because the industry has changed a lot since I was here previously. So, we're coming up on a really exciting milestone. this December will be 29 years of operations. Next year's our 30th anniversary. So some pretty cool stuff in the works. But yeah, it's just been great being back. This industry is a blast. And yeah, we're going to see what comes next.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's super fascinating so you kind of started out almost as like a generalist marketer here.
Yeah.
Which I think is the best way to start if you're getting into marketing for any brand or you're launching a marketing career. It's like you want to start out kind of as a generalist that does everything. That's kind of how I started out too.
Yeah.
And you just get to see so many different sides of what it takes to actually successfully market a company. And then you can choose to specialize in, the one or two things that really drive the needle forward later.
Yeah.
So, when you left Heavy Seas and went into the advertising side of things, what did you specialize in there, and how has that helped you to bring new skills that have driven revenue for Heavy Seas?
Yeah, good question. So when I was at the advertising agency, I was in client experience. So my job primarily was I was the person that spoke to our various clients. I was discussing with them, like, what exactly, are you interested in using our agency for? What services can we provide you? Understanding their business goals. And I was this was I had clients in all different kinds of industries. And it just was, it probably gave me a lot more, how do I say this? Like people skills in the sense of getting really good at having thick skin.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was.
That's the agency life.
Yeah, that's the agency life. So it was very much a management role, which when I was at Heavy Seas prior, I had a marketing director that was my boss, and so I specialized, like I said, in really events. But once I went to the agency and I got to manage various client work, different budgets, different types of work, it kind of just really deepened, just my management skill set. Which I think helped really propel me when I came back here into the director of marketing role, managing a lot of different projects that we're doing here, from our digital marketing to our events to product development, overseeing like the creative and the creative strategy from a packaging standpoint. So just being able to wear a lot of hats, I think helped, is the skill that I also learned a lot or deepened while I was at the agency, because I was always familiar with this industry, and of course I knew this brand very well. So that's kind of why I said that the move to leave was probably the best thing I could have done, because it helped me tap into skills that I might not have been able to tap into if I had just stayed here.
Right.
But yeah, it's been fun.
Awesome. And so, you mentioned that you wear a lot of hats now. So what does your day-to-day actually look like? I feel like you're just doing so many different things. Like what is your role?
The day-to-day, it's not, there's no day that looks the same. I like to come to the brewery every day, which for me, during COVID, like so many people, I was working, that work from home lifestyle. That lifestyle did not work for me. I found myself like rolling out of bed and just immediately checking emails and then not stopping until 7 p.m. or whatever.
Yeah.
So I like being able to come to the brewery because it's kind of like that delineation of, all right, I'm going into work. But the actual job itself, it really just is different. There's so many different things that we're working on at any given point. So there are days that are more office days for me, a lot of planning days. The thing about a brewery, which I don't think, unless you're kind of in the industry, a lot of people don't realize like how complex it is with when we're making decisions like putting out a new beer, for example, a new style, a new product. It is not something that is just made for something that's going to happen tomorrow or next week, next month. It's like a year to 18 months down the road. So like we have 2025 all figured out. We're going to be starting conversations now or very soon about what does 2026 look like. Wow. So it really is something that is just really you need to be forward thinking. And with beer, as other industries, we do monitor trends. We like to pay attention on what's going on, what flavors and styles our customers are interested in, and we might be trying to predict what they might be interested in 18 months from now, and it's really hard. So there's just so much that goes into just planning. So a lot of my time is dedicated into just planning whatever we're hoping to do in the future. But then just the day-to-day is your typical, how do we ensure that our customers are aware of, the beers that we have out, the events that we have coming up, trying to encourage people to come to our tap room, which has been open since 2015. And we've gone through some expansions here at the tap room. So we've started allowing people to rent private events here since we have spaces for it now. So yeah, it's just probably similar to marketing for any brand. How do you keep your name out there so people know what you're doing and who you are, and how do we stay relevant in a very, very, very competitive market?
Yeah, much more competitive than it used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to go back to what you said about planning so far in advance.
Yeah.
Is that something that has kind of evolved over time? Do you feel like as you've gotten bigger, there's an increased need to plan further ahead in advance because there's so many different layers to the business now?
Yeah.
Or is that for all breweries?
So every brewery has, or every business has their own business model. For us, we do distribute in 15 states plus DC. So our business model is mainly distribution. A little bit of our taproom business, but we focus our efforts on distributing our beer to not just Maryland, to pretty much up and down the East Coast.
Yep.
And every state has a different laws or nuances to their laws. There are some products that we make that are popular in a certain market that might not be as popular as another market. So it's really around, with our product portfolio, figuring out the best array of offerings that is going to meet our entire footprint. And we've got, core brands like Loose Cannon and Tropicana, which are staples in pretty much all the markets that we distribute in. But planning so far in advance, there's a lot of layers to it. There is even just the materials that you need, sourcing cans, and then there's different cans types, painted cans to PSL labels, which a lot of the painted cans, there's a 5-month lead time. So if we're going to produce a beer that we want to serve in a painted can, and that's kind of Loose Cannon, it's,
yep.
We're not even getting that packaging from our supplier in-house until 5-6 months down the road.
Wow.
So that's just an example, but there's a lot of layers that goes into the decisions that need to be made for releasing a new product or continuing to make a product.
Yeah.
And then there's just been a lot of changes in the market too, with just costs increasing, supplies kind of being more in demand with more breweries. So there's lots of changes that have led to making sure we're really buttoned up, and being proactive with the planning helps for that.
So on that note, you mentioned that you're heavily focused on the distribution side of things.
Yeah.
And, that's why you're the largest craft brewery in Maryland.
Right.
I think with that, though, it comes with its own set of challenges, because a lot of other breweries that I speak with that are smaller than you guys, they're shifting their strategy now that distribution has become much more competitive and much more challenging. Everybody's saying, I'm just going to focus on growing taproom sales.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong here, but my assumption is that is not quite as much of an option for you guys, because taproom sales could never fully make up for your distribution game.
And
right?
you're correct with that. When you look at our overall revenue, the taproom is a much smaller piece of it. But the taproom is hugely important. And I'm sure what you've probably heard from a lot of other breweries, just despite size, is so here's just a scenario. If I go to a restaurant or a liquor store or whatever, I'm going to see my beer, but I'm going to also see hundreds of other offerings, right? So when you go to a tap room, a brewery's tap room, you are just there and you're face to face with one specific brand. So from like an experiential standpoint, the tap room is huge. It's definitely for us an extension of our marketing and getting people to come here to experience our brand, experience our products. Because that's the other thing, when you go to a restaurant or a liquor store, they might have, loose cannon on tap, but they don't. I have 20 beers on tap that, a lot of people might have only ever tried one or two of our beers before. So it gives people an opportunity to try more variety from a brewery, and again, experience our brand without competition. And hopefully, people come, they love our beers, they love what they taste, they like the brand, they have a good time here. That when they leave and then they're shopping, they see our product and it stands out to them. So the tap room is hugely important from a brand awareness and experiential standpoint. Yes, not as much revenue, but for us, it is definitely a way to introduce ourselves to newer people that might not be as familiar with us, get them to try a new style or seasonal or whatever it might be that they've never had before. So, yeah.
That's super interesting because everybody that I talk to who, granted is on a much smaller scale than you guys, almost has the opposite approach of that, where they're like, we're basically breaking even on distribution,
right?
Because their margins are so low just due to increased costs now, that they look at distribution as like a brand awareness play.
Sure.
And
to bring them to the tap room.
To the tap room.
Yeah, interesting.
So it's just fascinating how at different growth levels, you tend to think of it differently.
Well,
but it makes sense.
Probably another reason for it is, if I had to guess, so we have two brew houses here. We have a 60-barrel brew house, which is, you consider that our mainstream brew house. Mm-hmm. That's what we're brewing loose cannon on, Tropicana. Then we have our 15-barrel brew house, which is still a pretty big brew house. It's, it was intended to be sort of like a pilot batch system for us where we could put, we could brew test batches of beers from that, or we'll use that for like collaborations. But it's still a good bit of beer that we're brewing on that system. And for our size, or for other breweries that might be a little bit smaller than us, they probably have a smaller brew house, so they can do a lot of small batch releases and limited releases and taproom exclusives. And every week, if you were to go to their taproom, there might be 2, 3, 4 new things on. That's just not what we are capable of doing. Mm-hmm. So for us, we rely on distribution of like our core brands, because that is, loose cannon, for example, has been around for 20 years. Yeah. So for us, it's kind of keeping our core brands alive and finding new ways to reinvent and or not reinvent, but like breathe new life into a beer that has been around for so long and is kind of a staple in Baltimore now. But
yeah, that makes sense. And I would imagine too, for, I guess there's kind of pros and cons to each level of growth. Like in, at your size, it feels like distribution makes a little bit more sense because maybe, since you can brew so much, there's some economies of scale there that you can take advantage of.
Sure, yeah.
Whereas if you're a smaller craft brewery, you kind of get eaten alive on the distribution game just because you don't have those economies of scale, but maybe you have more flexibility in the tap room, so that's why it makes more sense.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. There's a lot of puzzles to solve at any given moment, and that's certainly one of them. So
yeah, that's fascinating. So first let me ask you this: you're distributed in 15 states and DC.
Yes.
What is the growth plan for you guys now? How do you look at where you want to grow in the future? Is the game to get distributed in more states? Is it to do that and grow taproom sales? Like, what are your main priorities for growth?
For now, it is to get deeper instead of wider. So yes, we're in 15 states, but I'll give you an example. We used to have a pretty good distribution in North Carolina. I'm talking like 8-10 years ago. Maybe we were selling 20,000, 30,000 cases of beer a year in North Carolina. Well, fast forward to today, we do about 1,000 cases. And that's because within that time period, 300 new breweries in North Carolina have opened up. So there still is something to be said with craft beer about supporting local. So for us, we are pretty much, we are a solid like mid-Atlantic brewery. Our core markets, I would say, are Maryland, DC, Virginia, Delaware, maybe some parts of Pennsylvania. So really, we're not going too far away from where we're located. But the farther that you go, the less, distribution, it has changed a lot over the years because of just the growth of the craft beer industry from a national level. So for us right now and for the foreseeable future, let's get as deep as we can and grow our core markets, because for us, that's where we see the growth opportunities. Not to say down the road we may explore expanding into new states, but for right now, that is not the highest priority. And then, from a taproom perspective, we did invest in quite a significant renovation here about 1.5 to 2 years ago. So we wanted to make this space a little bit bigger. We wanted it to be a place where people would want to come. And we do a lot of different events. And like I said, I kind of mentioned earlier, private events. People can book our spaces for birthday parties or whatever. But just trying to find ways that we can bring people here, because we did invest quite a good bit of time and money into just making this like an atmosphere that craft beer enthusiasts would want to come to.
Yeah. You did a great job. It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been good.
That makes a lot of sense, going deeper as opposed to going wider. Because there's no sense in trying to expand to all 50 states when you sell 1,000 cases and 35 of them. Yeah,
and the thing too that is, it also makes like the beer industry very complex is just because of the 3-tier system, you have to work through wholesalers in any market that you're in, of our class size. There are some breweries smaller that can self-distribute. We can't. So let's say we wanted to go into Colorado, for example, we would have to find a wholesaler and develop a partnership there so we can just have distribution. And that process can take time. Again, there's a lot of complexities about just okay, should we want to expand farther? There's new laws we need to get used to, new states we would have to register beers in. That takes time and money. So lots of layers. So for right now, deepening versus widening is kind of the goal.
And what do you do to deepen the brand awareness in the locations that you're distributed in? Because I can imagine, you're the largest and oldest craft brewery in Maryland, so that's, I don't want to say easy to deepen that.
Yeah.
But you're local, so you can have people at the tap room and you can do events and you can engage with the community. That's easy. But how do you do that in Florida?
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. It's really hard. A lot of the states that we're not physically in, or we don't have a territory or a sales rep in, a lot of the time, we have to kind of rely on our wholesaler relationships. They will have sales reps who are kind of the feet in the street to go out and about and sell our beer or, get our beer involved in events. We can consider sponsorships for, events or large scale opportunities, venues, in outside markets. But it's hard. The farther away you are, and if you don't have someone there to physically kind of help, get the word out, it's hard. So a lot of it kind of comes down to just, I guess, marketing fundamentals. We do rely on our social media. We rely on driving people to our website. Of course, we we want to drive people to come here. Good thing about us is we're pretty close to BWI Airport, so there's definitely, we're close to some tourists that might be coming in into Baltimore, and it's a pretty quick drive from the airport, and a lot of hotels and things like that. So we have, our email marketing that has thousands of subscribers, and they're not just within the state. So there's ways that we try to get the word out outside of Maryland. But I would say to a degree, it's just as hard doing that in Maryland. Yes, we've been around for a long time, but something that I feel like we've kind of struggled with is that staying relevant piece, because there are a lot of newer and younger breweries than us that are making some awesome beer. And we're lucky in the sense that there are a lot of people that have been, drinking our beer and loyal for a long time. But there's also people who are younger who, when we opened, they weren't legally allowed to drink or, or they love our beers, but there's 3 other breweries that are, in their neighborhood that they want to go try. So it's still challenging in trying to stay relevant and keep us top of mind. And I think for us, we've done a few things within the last year, particularly to kind of, claim or reclaim our position as, Maryland's largest brewery, one of the OGs in the state. That's important to us because it's not like I'm saying, don't worry about or don't think about any of those other breweries in the state. But when you think of craft beer in Maryland, we should be top of mind too. We should, other breweries might come top of mind too, but we should be one of them that comes top of mind. So for us, that is important too, maintaining that position as one of the OGs and, a staple craft brewery in Maryland.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in order to do that, what has the strategy looked like? Because I know you mentioned that, driving people to the website is really important, and a lot of the digital side, which makes sense because you can only rely on your wholesalers, salespeople so much. They have other accounts too, and everybody's just it's competitive.
It is. It's never been harder to sell beer.
So what do you do from the digital side to increase brand awareness and differentiate yourself and drive people to the site? Like, what's the overall online marketing strategy?
Well, we just hired a new social media manager, and she's been fantastic. And I think for us, it's just from a tactical execution standpoint, we try to try and get as much information out that we think is relevant without kind of crowding or making too much noise, if that makes sense. Like, there is always something that we could be talking about or highlighting from a new product or a new event or whatever. So it's kind of like, how do we say too much without overwhelming people? Like the Netflix effect, I say that. So it's just trying to, I guess our overall strategy is involved in finding the channels that I think we're seeing the best return on, or where people are engaging with us the most, and making sure we're posting relevant information to keep them informed. With social specifically, social media is social, right? In its name. So that for us is really a way for us to kind of build and strengthen the Heavy Seas community, if you will. So we'll do, fun stuff on there too to make it not just so here's a picture of a beer in a pint glass.
That's like my, I love everybody in this industry, but if there's one pet peeve is the wrong word, but I feel like people's social strategy could be so much better. It's like you're in such a fun business. Breweries are just such a good time. There's so much opportunity to have a fun brand and create really fun, exciting, engaging content, and so few breweries do it.
I think we tried to humanize our brand too. We'll do a lot of content around kind of behind the scenes. So I brewed a beer about a month ago at this point, what I'm sipping on right now. And so like we filmed me brewing it because I don't brew a lot.
Yeah.
Or like just, you know, cool shots of like things getting packaged, or I don't know, just like highlighting a lot of our team members here. Like, so I think we'll do stuff like that, behind the scene type content, just kind of to put more of a face to the brand. If we're offsite at events, you know, showcasing us out there, like where we're pouring beer, where we're participating. And I don't know, it just, there's so much that we could be talking about. For us, it's, I don't want to say like we have content pillars per se, but there's definitely things that I think we lean into more versus not, or versus other things that we could be talking about. But yeah, trying to keep it fun, trying to keep it, you know, entertaining, where people would want to engage and think, you know, like, that's really cool event that you guys are talking about. I want to come to the tap room for that. So
yeah, well, that's a great way to put it too, is humanizing the brand. Because I think that's the thing that so many breweries and also distilleries and wineries who might be listening to this as well kind of miss. Like, if you look at their social media, it's just like text overlays of like, hey, we're doing this event this weekend, and like like their entire grid is just like like graphics basically. And you know, it's like people want to see the people behind the brand and like funny stuff that they're doing or behind the scenes, and that just makes it so much more engaging and exciting.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to go back to something that you were talking about before, where you know, we were talking about the different social media or just overall marketing strategies that you like to use, and I get to ask you this because you're a marketer. Attribution is always very challenging in this space. Like, you know, drawing a line from, okay, we spent marketing dollars here and it resulted in in these sales. That's super tough.
Yeah.
And you guys are doing a lot, so. And it's okay if the answer is no on this, because I know for a lot of people it is, but like, is there any way to attribute the marketing you're doing to actual sales, or is it just kind of like, this is our marketing budget, we're putting this out here, and, you know, all we're looking at is really like growth in revenue?
No, it's a really, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest thing that I'm constantly trying to pay attention to. Like, every decision that we make has to have some sort of return on investment. And sometimes it hasn't worked out, or sometimes it might not have been the best choice, you know, but I think when it comes to digital, we have a pretty small budget. So the expectation is, let's see what we can do to put, you know, some money behind paid ads or whatever it might be. And you can attribute more of that, like, sales with like events. Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're gonna, I don't know, we have an event coming up and we're selling tickets for it. Okay, cool. Did our ads help? Like, since we posted the ad till when it ran, till did we see a spike in sales? Like, that's, you can actually quantify that. But a lot of what we do, you know, it is hard to quantify. And I kind of use the analogy of like when you are watching TV and you see a commercial, like, how can, you know, just because I see a 30-second commercial on something, you know, doesn't mean that I'm necessarily going to go out right then and buy it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same for our digital efforts a lot of times, is we can't always quantify it. But I will say, from like a budgetary standpoint, everything that we decide we want to move forward with, we do analyze it. Like, sponsorships too is another way where we can quantify it. If we're going to invest dollars in sponsoring something, I'm much more interested in a sponsorship where my beer is going to be at the event or being poured there or sold there, versus just logo placement on a stage or something like that. So yeah, I mean, we try. Maybe that's the short version of all this is we try to just think strategically as to, is this the best use of our dollars to help move the needle? Yeah,
and I ask you that out of genuine curiosity, because that's something, even as an agency, you know, we're trying to nail down as well. Like, we have certain ways of doing it, we mainly focus on taproom stuff.
Yeah.
Like growing taproom sales, which means getting more customers in the door and
Right.
then, trying to find ways to get them to spend more while they're in the taproom.
Right.
So, we look at things like revenue increase in the taproom. But then there's some other things that, like events, like you said, is a big one where it's a little bit easier to attribute that. E-commerce, too, is another thing that we'll look at in, states where you can sell beer online. That's easy because it's like we can actually, the sale happens online, so we can draw a line
For sure.
directly from like, okay, they clicked on this ad, they went to the website, they purchased,
Right.
and then that revenue is sent back to Facebook, and we can track that.
Right.
But yeah, it's hard. It's just like,
Yeah, we have a web store where we currently do sell beer. We work with like a third party vendor to manage the actual shipping and handling of beer, but even just like our web store to sell merch or T-shirts or things like that. So there's instances like that where we might run a paid ad or something and then you can see like, okay, cool, this ran and we sold a lot of shirts.
It worked. Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah.
But it's challenging.
Yeah. Well, I wanna wrap up with. I guess just an interesting question.
Sure.
So right now you've got a lot going on. You're heavy into distribution, heavy into taproom sales. You're doing a whole lot, heavy into events. What would you say is the number one business challenge that you're facing at the moment, and how do you plan to solve for that?
That's such a good question. Transparently, it has never been harder to sell beer. I know I said that before. There's a lot of reasons for that. So there's a lot of competition. It's a very saturated market. Alcohol is down, and I'm not just talking beer. Wine, spirits, like nationwide, alcohol is down. People are drinking less. So how do we sell more beer? Because we have, if you walk around and you see like what we've established here, this is an expensive business.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of money to get started. Fermentation tanks, brewing equipment. All that stuff is not cheap. Hops, ingredients, they're not cheap. And if people are just drinking less, and again, that could be just consumers, there's a trend in just generally consumers are drinking less beer. I know inflation and the economy is a little scary right now, so people aren't spending as much in general. So that is probably the thing that keeps all of us at Heavy Seas, and I would bet to say it every brewery that you would talk to right now that does kind of have a similar business model to us and they're distributing, is how can we sell more beer? There's some things that we're trying. For us, one thing that we've kind of tapped into this past year is we're looking at ways that we can diversify our product portfolio a little bit. So
I noticed you guys did like a lighter alcohol content beer.
Yeah. So Loose Cannon is our flagship. We have Little Loose that's out right now. That's a 3.9%. I don't want to say version of Loose Cannon, but it has the same hops, like the same same kind of base recipe as Loose Cannon, but at a lighter ABV. Mm-hmm. And then we don't actually have the brewing equipment here to make non-alcoholic beer. Mm-hmm. But we've dabbled into craft sodas. So we make a root beer right now. We're brewing the Dominion root beer under license, and we've been making that for, I don't know, 8 months, maybe a little bit longer by now. We're exploring some other craft sodas. We did actually have a line of canned cocktails, which unfortunately there were some logistical challenges with that. So we kind of had to press pause on that, but that's something I think we hope to come back to too. So diversifying our portfolio so it's not just relying on beer. Mm-hmm. Trying to think of other innovative ways that we can, whether that's like a brand partnership or a collaboration. We did a collaboration earlier this year with 100.7 The Bay. Mm-hmm. So, that was fun. That helped we got a lot of advertising out of that, but it also, we were able to tap into like their audience too. So we're just trying to think of ways that we can sell more beer.
Yeah.
So,
So
that's a very loaded question, but yeah, that's definitely what keeps us up at night.
Yeah, 100%. So it's basically trying to diversify your portfolio and then trying to advertise more and get the brand out there.
Yeah, and also, and like I said, so Loose Cannon, next year is our 30th anniversary, which is something we're really excited about. Loose Cannon, our flagship, is celebrating its 20th anniversary next year. So how do we breathe life into our core brand? We're not going to stop making Loose Cannon, but there might be new ways we can talk about Loose Cannon or message it or celebrate it, so people want to buy more Loose Cannon too. So there's a lot of things that we're thinking through, but I don't know. We'll see. Support your local breweries.
Yes, absolutely.
If I could give everyone a piece of advice, if you just it's tough out there right now. So support your local breweries.
100%. I know I said that was going to be the last question.
That's
but
okay.
I have one more because I actually was meaning to ask you this. Just because Loose Cannon is such a flagship for Heavy Seas, how much of your growth is, or how much does it help to come out with a new beer? Do you always see like a immediate boost in sales from that when you come out with a new beer? And is that kind of almost part of the marketing strategy, you're pushing that beer for like a year until you come out with the next one, or is it more just about marketing the brand as a whole?
Yeah, good question. That's also been kind of tough because we've put out a lot of really great beers that we were really excited about. We invested a lot of time and money behind, and they just didn't kind of take off like we were hoping. And that's kind of hard to predict. So Loose Cannon, which is our number one beer, our flagship, Tropicana is number two. When we made Tropicana, I'm trying to think of what year that was, but it was kind of like, okay, cool. This is like the citrus version, a citrusy Loose Cannon. It has orange peel and blood orange and mango, and it's very fruity flavored. But like, people aren't going to like this better than Loose Cannon. And it took off. So it wasn't something that we really predicted. And it has been our number two seller for years now. So it sometimes it's hard to predict what is actually going to be, what's going to work, what's not. But I think we do a pretty good job of trying to like pay attention to just like, the market, what styles are popular, what are people interested in trying. That's another, I should have touched on this earlier with the taproom. I mean, this is a great way where we get like intel.
You get to test.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, like because we have, so we have 20 taps here. I mean, this is where we can get feedback in real time. If we put something out, let's see how people like it in the tap room. And if it's something that is kind of in demand, then we can consider brewing it on a larger scale. So I think just for us, it's important to have new beers because everyone seems to be chasing new, so that's definitely, I would say every year, or at least for the last several years, we've always had a few new styles. And that could be just like a seasonal release or something, part of like a variety pack. This year we did a summer variety pack that had a sour, the Little Loose I was telling you about. What else was in Summer Nights? Oh, our lager and a shandy. We had never made a shandy before. And we were like, what a perfect variety pack to brew something new. And we included the shandy. So it's important because I think it helps keeps you like staying relevant. Like, oh, Heavy Seas came out with something new. They don't only just brew Loose Cannon. Right, yeah. But it's I wouldn't say that when we put out a new style, we are expecting it one way or another. But once it's out in the market, that's when we really need to start paying attention.
Yeah.
How fast is it depleting off of shelves? So when a wholesaler buys it and it goes to a retailer, like what's the pull through like? Is it moving quickly? Are people, what's the consumer like demand for it? Are they repeat buying it? So it's I don't know. New helps from a marketing standpoint, keeps us relevant. New does not always mean it's going to stay around for a while.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's like you rely on your flagship because that makes up the bulk of the sales.
100%.
And I don't want to say you don't expect anything out of the new beers, but
Yeah.
you have to keep producing them to stay relevant, and it also gives you more at-bats to have something take off.
Yeah. And there's trends in everything, right? So like in beer, sours were really hot, and they still are pretty popular, but like, sours a few years ago were huge. How like funky and crazy can you get with your sours? Now there's like breweries out there that's what they do. Like they have this niche following of people that like their smoothie sours,
I hate sours.
It just depends. Like, and then lagers seem to kind of be coming back now.
Yeah.
Beer that is truly like beer flavored beer, right?
Yeah.
Like, but that wasn't always the case. IPAs are still the number one best-selling craft beer style, and people who aren't necessarily IPA drinkers, they might come in and say like, oh, you've got 5 IPAs, and this might not even just be for us. They'll go to another brewery's tap room and they see a bunch of IPAs. Well, that's because IPAs sell. I'm sorry, but IPAs sell.
Right.
But we do want to make sure we have a variety of offerings too, to showcase like the breadth of what we can do and the quality. But that's part of it too, is deciding, is coming up with beer styles that, again, are relevant if there's something that's trending, but also to make sure we recognize that not everyone drinks an IPA, for example.
A little bit of diversity.
Having diversity is important.
Okay, I know I said the last question was 2 questions ago, but I promise this will be the last
You're good.
one. So when we talk about moving beer off shelves, I want to get your take on this as a brewer and a marketer, because most people I interview are just brewers, and they're really into making the beer. They don't care so much about marketing it, which makes sense.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. But you're both. You're on the marketing side of things. You're on the brewing side of things. So when you look at distribution and moving beer off shelves, how much of it depends on how cool of a label you have versus the beer itself?
Oh, that's a good question too. I think a lot of times people buy a beer that they might not have had before because they think the label is cool and they think it stands
I'm one
out.
of those people. That's
And I don't know if you're I keep saying like IPA because whatever, just using that as an example. Like if you're an IPA drinker,
I'm like the guy that all the hardcore brewery people make fun of, because I'm like, oh yeah, I love IPAs and I'll drink it just because the label's cool. It's
right.
Like the stereotypical
But that
customer.
happens. That definitely happens. Like people will go into a store and they'll see a beer label that really stands out to them, and they see it's an IPA. Cool. I like IPAs, and this is a really cool label. I'm going to buy it.
Yeah.
So that helps maybe sell in that first purchase, right? Then you need to make sure the beer tastes good.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't taste good, that person, despite how cool the label is, how cool the packaging is, like they will probably not buy it again if they didn't like it. I don't really care about that first purchase. I care about that second, third, fourth, fifth purchase.
That makes a lot of sense.
I think, my brewmaster shares that sentiment. My dad certainly shares that sentiment. So that's important. Like, yes, we want to have a brand that visually is eye-catching, but equally important, if not more important, is the quality and the flavor and the beer itself.
Yeah.
And I think because we've been around for almost 30 years, we do a pretty good job. I'm biased.
Yep.
But yeah, that to me is I wouldn't say one is more than the other. The marketing and the brand vision is huge, but so is the quality of the product that we actually make.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's like the ultimate test of if you have good beer is if you have terrible labeling. But you can still grow your brand.
Right. There, you know what? It's kind of funny though. I've seen a lot of just over the years. I forget the brewery that does it, but like it's literally a white label, and I think in black ink or text it just says, I forget what it says or the name of it, but beer or like and that's it. And
awesome.
you know, there's no flashy designs or anything like that. It's pretty much, but it grabbed my attention because it was so simple and just
It's like so bad that it's good.
you know, beer flavored beer or whatever
Right.
it said. So yeah, it just. But I will say that's also a fun part of the job is kind of the visual identity, the branding.
Yeah.
We've, you know, as I'm sure you can recognize by our logo and stuff, you know, we've had this kind of piratey nautical theme with our brand for years. So I mean, that's been fun.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah, I mean, I love the brand. It's cool.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wrap it up there because I
Cool.
could go on forever. But thank you so much for coming
Thank
on.
you.
This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks for coming to the
And
tap room, and I'm excited to hear this when it goes out.
Yeah. Well, how can people find out about you?
I mean, you can go to our website, hsbeer.com. Our social media handle for all the platforms is at Heavy Seas Beer. That's probably the quickest way to check us out. Constantly posting about, like I said, events that we have coming in the tap room, beers that are releasing. So yeah, from an intraweb perspective, just Google us, Heavy Seas Beer or hsbeer.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.